All right, so let's go back to the story at hand. It is the looming indictment now for Hunter Biden. Your reaction to this now? It is a bit of a huge 180 from the sweetheart plea deal he thought he had a short time ago.
Well, when you think of the criminal resume of Joe Biden, this is small potatoes. This is nothing. I mean, a gun charge, when we're looking at a guy who has committed tax fraud, we're looking at a guy who's committed money laundering, we're looking at a guy who is an unregistered foreign agent. He's working for foreign governments over America. And I think this is just a consolation prize. This is just their way of saying, see, look, we're actually going after Hunter Biden, too, because they're all really throwing the book at, with a bunch of bogus charges, President Trump, trying to put him behind bars for 100 years. So Hunter's the consolation prize, but we want the big guy. We want Joe Biden. We know that he has committed major crimes while sitting in the White House. He's the most corrupt individual to ever reside in the White House. He's committed anything from quid pro quo to treason. And they're going after President Trump instead. Joe Biden is a criminal, and we need to have charges launched against him.
We're still waiting for, we're still waiting for National Archives, right, to release those pseudonym emails. How convenient that they were leaving it up to Biden himself and Obama. So, yeah, obviously, we know Chairman James Comer, Kari, is working hard to try and get more documentation. The push continues. In the meantime, what's your reaction to Donald Trump? That interview he did was pretty fascinating and wide-ranging, but he did say that he would absolutely take the stand in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. We'll be talking to his attorneys in a short time, but Hugh Hewitt's radio show yesterday, it did make a little news, and I'm not surprised he said he would do it. Whether or not his attorneys want him to do it is another thing, though, Kari.
Are you kidding? He would be the greatest defendant to sit there and tell the story of what's happened to him. I can't think of a better man to communicate just the absolute hell he's been put through than President Trump. This is going to be the trial of the century, and the truth is finally going to come out. And I am absolutely looking forward to seeing that. I actually think he could almost defend himself, because he knows this case inside and out. He knows that it's just another witch hunt when, as I said, the real criminal is sitting in the White House right now, Joe Biden. And frankly, maybe his biggest crime, Joe Biden's, is that he's an awful father. In a weird way, in a small way, I actually feel a little bit bad for Hunter Biden, that the role model in his life was a criminal named Joe Biden. What a terrible role model to lead his son into this life of crime. And, you know, maybe if Hunter Biden goes to jail for a year or two, he'll clean up and get off the drugs and he can turn his life around. But Joe Biden is the real man that we should be indicting and going after.
Well, you know, we've talked a lot about the moral compass and ignoring little Navy, their grandchild, for so long. Had a lot of criticism and, you know, just the comments he usually says, even when he's at a disaster zone. The empathy chip there really missing. Let's talk a little bit about the sentencings for the Proud Boys. They got hard time, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was asked about that, if he would pardon Enrique Tarrio if he becomes president, by our Eric Bolling. Let's play his reaction here.
If they were BLM, they would not have been prosecuted. Then there's other examples of people that probably did commit misconduct. They may have been violent. But to say it's an act of terrorism when it was basically a protest that devolved into a riot, to do excessive sentences, you can look at, okay, maybe they were guilty, but 22 years, if other people that did other things got 6 months. So I think we need a single standard of justice. And so we'll use pardons and commutations as appropriate to ensure that everyone's treated equally. And as we know, a lot of people with the BLM riots, they didn't get prosecuted at all.
He's not wrong about that. Of course, DeSantis is still trailing behind Trump, who's massively ahead in the polls. But what do you make of his comments there and how he feels about the sentencing of Enrique Tarrio?
Well, he's jumped all around and how he responds to this, but we don't have to worry about it because I don't think he'll ever be, I know he will never be president, but I believe that President Trump, when he gets back into office, will look at this case because we have a lot of political prisoners sitting in the D.C. gulag. And yet, you know, Ashley Babbitt was murdered in cold blood, and the Capitol Police officer who did that just got a promotion. There's a lot of people who should be sitting behind bars who are not. And a lot of the people from January 6th did nothing wrong. They showed up. This was a staged riot. I think everyone's realizing that after we're seeing some of the video trickling out, and hopefully we'll get the rest of the video and we can piece everything together and know exactly what happened and who really should be behind bars for what happened on January 6th, and really who shouldn't be behind bars. And I think that President Trump will examine that and let many of these people out, because what they have done does not deserve years and years and decades behind bars. And we really should look back at some of the footage from the Summer of Love that was staged by the Democrats, where they burned down a church across the street from the White House, where they torched businesses, cop cars, beat people to death in the streets, and they were given a slap on the wrist or no sentencing and no justice at all. And we
Some
need to
of the
start
protesters who were put in a pen actually received money now. They're getting paid for being apprehended there. It is completely upside down, and you're right there. And the sentence handed down so heavy. Rinke Tario, we always also note, wasn't physically at the Capitol on January 6th. Kari Lake, so glad to have you in with us today. Appreciate your time. Good to see you.
Thank you, Bianca.
Thank you.